Good evening, all. It's Devora Krasnianski, and I'm really excited about this Jewish Women Talk About Midlife series. For a long time, I've been coaching people in areas such as dating and life in general, and it's been humbling and wonderful to be part of people's transformations. And more recently, as I entered midlife, I'm doing more work with people in this wonderful and confusing stage of midlife. And hence I started this Jewish Women Talk About Midlife, so we can talk about all kinds of things. And if you'd like to have a conversation about your midlife or anything else in your mind, you can reach me at jewishmidlife@gmail.com. So welcome to our talk tonight with Dr. Biberfeld about midlife, a time to find ourselves. I want to thank Ruchama Klabman of maskparents.org for arranging this important topic. So thank you, Ruchama. I'm so excited, Dr. Biberfeld, that you're here to talk about this important topic. This idea of midlife, and that's really why I started this whole thing of Jewish Women Talk About Midlife, is that there's so much going on for us at midlife, whether it's physiologically, emotionally. And so I want to talk to that topic today, is not so much the physiological, but really what's going on for us, what's going on, and what taking this time of midlife to really find ourselves again. So really, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
My pleasure. Really my pleasure.
And as we get started, just talk a little bit about the work that you do in general in mental health, and then why we're talking to you today. Thank you.
So I'm a psychologist and I'm in private practice. And at this point, I say I'm over the field. I'm in the field for over 30 years. I started when I was 2 or 3. I'm really, a child prodigy.
Right.
I'm in the field for a very, very long time. What I do changes over the years, but it's a variety of seeing young adults, seeing older adults, and everybody in between, working with some teens, doing a lot of parenting. When I say parenting, I have people coming in whose kids are children. I have people coming in whose kids are teens, and I have people coming in to get help with adult children sometimes as well. A lot of the work that I'm doing with people is about obviously growth and transitioning their lives from a place where they're not so happy to a place where they're happier. And sometimes that's completely internal, and sometimes that involves changing externals as well, and changing circumstances in their lives. And I'm very grateful for what I do. I do teaching and supervision as well, which makes things, just changes up the field a little bit in my office. So.
Okay, so today we're talking about finding yourself in midlife. And in our previous conversation, we spoke about a lot of things. So I'm really excited about this topic. So when we're saying finding yourself, first of all, what are we saying? What do we mean by that?
Right, it's a very good question, because are we lost? Can you find something that's not lost? I don't think most people are lost, but I do think that when people approach midlife, and I think that means something different for very different people. And I think that, in the Orthodox community, midlife hits in it earlier. If people get married relatively young and have children relatively young, then their kids are married. They could be in their early to mid 40s and have married off a good part of their children. Or sometimes you have people who don't have as many children, people who aren't married. I mean, there are many reasons people find themselves in changing circumstances. And when you're used to filling a role for most of your adult life, whether it's wife/mother, working, and then things shift for any reason, could be hopefully for very wonderful reasons, for mazel tovs and life moving on, naturally. And other times it's for harder reasons. We're often left thinking, who am I? Meaning, if I'm not doing this role anymore, well, then what is my role? What's my identity? If I'm no longer a mother to young children, if my marriage is all moved on, if my marriage isn't, or it's not what I hoped, or anything of the sort, or my job is changing, my financial stage is changing. Very often people are left with a lot of empty space in their head, or confused space in their head, one or the other, in terms of, okay, what now? What next?
So when we say finding yourself, we're talking about what next. That's what. Let's just define it for our conversation now.
I think finding yourself means, what can I be doing now to create a richer life for myself, given where I find myself? That's what I'd like to say.
Okay. So when someone is at that space and they actually have the headspace for it, or even if they don't have the headspace, what are we talking about? How do we find ourselves? like, what do we do or
So
think?
right. I think one of the things that I think our generation, and obviously our generation, I'm talking about even midlifers, okay, are good at, we're good at avoiding thinking. And sometimes for really good reasons, because we're so busy. And then even if we're not so busy, people aren't also comfortable thinking and taking stock. And people will do all sorts of things to avoid that. So I think the first thing is to not be afraid of having space in your head. And there's all sorts of ways to avoid thinking. Some of them are silly, like playing solitaire on the computer. You know, some of them are being busy with friends constantly, being busy with giving and chesed constantly, over involving yourself in a project. And they can all be good things. But I think the person has to be able to sort of be able to stay silent, listen to what's going on inside, see what feelings are coming up, see what, okay, if X has changed, what does Y mean? And just be not afraid of what some of the options might be and some of the changes. I think people are afraid of change. You know, most of us are. It's human.
Right. So as human, we're afraid of change, but I think what I also heard from you is that people are afraid of seeing what needs to be changed.
I think that human nature is to go to a tremendous amount of effort and a lot of lengths to avoid thinking and avoid looking at what might benefit from change. We're creatures of habit. That's the way Hashem made us. It takes effort, energy, and a desire to do something different, even something good.
So for some people, the change is forced on them. Like it's just, and then they have to do something. But we're talking about the people who it's not forced on them, but it's just there's that feeling, and sometimes they even recognize that they are avoiding, and they don't want to go there.
Absolutely. I mean, there are times when I find myself in a small way avoiding. I have things to be mulling about, to be taken care of. I'm not talking about big responsibilities, smaller ones. And I can find numerous things to do instead. You know, I'm sitting in my office trying to do some research for something or whatever it is. And it's amazing how many things we can distract ourselves with. We're all talented at that, I think. I mean, some of us may be better than others, but it's something we're all really good at. So, and the ability to say stop, just stop, and just listen, sit, listen, stop.
But are there some ways that are more conducive or easier or make it a little bit better to just stop? Like I'm just thinking, go to sit on the beach and journal.
That sounds wonderful. You're in Florida. I'm in Brooklyn. I don't have any beaches. I mean, it's really cold by Coney Island at the moment, you know, and I'm not there during the summer very much. So you can, yes, nature is really helpful, and it's very conducive to sort of just stopping and thinking. But a person can create their own space. You know, it could be with music, something slower, softer that they enjoy. It could be, you know, most of us have access to the internet. You can go on and find beautiful scenery to watch. Something which isn't going to take up your mind, but is going to open up your mind a little bit. You know, we probably have some innate knowledge of what are the things that allow us to open up more, and what are the things that close us down more and narrow our attention. And we're looking for the space to open up our attention. For some people, it's just sitting and taking slow, deep breaths. Something which, you know, we all breathe, but not all of us breathe enough. It's easy to forget to breathe consciously and intentionally during the day. So it could be music, it could be nature, it could be through writing, you know, and people say, but I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer either, at all. But you can just sit and journal and give yourself a prompt or look up a prompt. You want to try something interesting, write with your non-dominant hand. If you're lefty, write with your right hand. If you're righty, write with your right hand. And no, it's not going to be legible. It's not. But you'll find that you're going to tap into parts of you that are not normally tapped into when you do that. So these are just ways of just saying, okay, let's do something different. Let's just create this space to allow something different to happen.
And put your phone away.
Put your phone away. Turn it off.
And then you might find that you have nothing to do except for think.
Right. And that's, I think, really scary to people. I really think it is. And even for those of us who are not addicted to technology, it's such a great way of avoiding anything and everything, because we're checking emails, we're answering a text, we're answering a WhatsApp, we're doing whatever we're doing. It's all legitimate. but it doesn't give you any mind space. And even our generation, which didn't grow up from young with cell phones, it's really gotten simple to just get glued onto it.
So something that would get you into the zone of just thinking and without the distraction. And whether it's
And let's tell you that a lot of people aren't good at thinking if they don't know what they're thinking about. Just being for a bit. Let's start with just being.
okay, so what does just being mean?
So for different things, it can be different people. Different things, different people can mean different things. Let's try that in English. For some people, it's listen to a piece of music and just taking in the music. For somebody else, it's looking at a beautiful scene and just giving yourself time to look it in. It means slowing down, which I'm forcefully doing because I talk fast. As soon as I slow down, everything just becomes calmer. Rabbi Abraham Tversky, Zechrono Livracha, who was a world famous psychiatrist,
Right.
incredible person, told a story. And this is a man who's incredibly accomplished. And he once went to some sort of spa for treatment. This story,
I know.
So, okay, should I tell the story over anyway for those who don't?
Tell it.
Okay, and he said that he arranged to get I guess a massage, and then he had to sit in like a whirlpool type of thing for about 20 minutes. And he went through his massage. He's getting to the whirlpool, and he's sitting there. And after about 3 minutes, he said, "Man, okay, I'm done now." And the man says, "No, you have to stay." He said, "What do you mean I have to stay? I'm done." He said, "No, just sit there and just let the water And he said it was so hard, and he realized he had not had a clue how to spend time with himself. He wasn't thrilled about the idea of having to do it. So Rabbi Dr. Tversky can say that we can acknowledge that it's not an easy thing to do. Just stop and to be with ourselves. That's like step one before we go on to doing other things. It's just learning how to be. Because when we're really, really busy, when we're raising families, when we're earning livings, whenever we're doing, it's hard to do and be at the same time. It really is.
So I'm saying be, but just be present without any. There's nothing that has to come from this time.
No, absolutely. There's nothing that should come from this time. And people talk about mindfulness, and they hear, "Oh, mindfulness meditation." I'm not talking about mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness in this case is the idea of being physically and emotionally in one place at the same time. Which means if I'm sitting in my chair, and right now I'm on the computer, but let's say I'm listening to music, my mind and my body are doing the same thing. Not my body's in my chair and my mind is making up lists or thinking of all the things I have to do, which is a time for that. But just, I tell people, if you want to peel potatoes, just peel potatoes. And you're getting dressed in the morning, just get dressed. Stop with the multitasking.
Okay, so we were talking about getting time to think and just to not avoid being with ourselves. So in that, just listening to music or just peeling potatoes, what are we doing? Like as far as finding ourselves?
We're looking to recapture the inner voices inside of us that get drowned out in the noise of our lives. And we all have them. And then I guess the question we may be asking, if we have the time, is if I have the ability, what would I want to be doing now? If I don't have to be working full time, or I'm not busy carpooling children or doing homework, if I have time, and forget about money right now. I'm not even talking about money, but let's say you don't have to work full time. Even if you are working full time, women have 3 full-time jobs usually, but you only have 1 full-time job now. And your other full-time jobs aren't so full-time, then you've got time. What would I want to be doing with my time? And it's a great question for us, but it's a scary question for us, because usually it's just, how would I know?
Okay. So in our conversation before, we spoke about different areas to be thinking about where we have time to be. So let's talk to that a little bit.
Okay, so I think for some people, it's as simple as developing a hobby. That's a simple thing to say, but finding something that you wanted to do that you never had time to do. If I had a lot of time in my hands, I want to learn to play an instrument. Now, I don't think I have any musical talent particularly, honestly. When I was younger and kids wanted to play instruments, I was playing basketball. I like that better. But I would like to learn to play an instrument. And let's say I don't have any extra money around to learn to play an instrument. You can go on YouTube. excuse me, I'm, and learn how to play piano, guitar, you can do them like that. Hobbies, gardening, which won't go over big in Brooklyn, but okay, there are times that I've recommended to people to buy oil paint by number, like not the kids ones, but adult ones. Do some painting. Find something that just gives you some pleasure and some headspace to do it. There are hobbies that are more consuming, and there are hobbies that are much more relaxing. What would you want to do if you had that time? What would you like to do? That's one area. Another area, which as frum women is the area of spirituality. I think that I look around at the women who are raising big families or raising medium-sized or small families. It's all consuming. And there are women who have a spiritual connection throughout, and there are women who they're frum, but I don't know if they have a spiritual connection throughout. And having more headspace, it's a great thing to look into. There's so much available today for women in particular, whether you're more into Hasidus, whether you're more intellectual, whether you want to learn Jewish thought, Jewish history, explore the side of you that might have gotten short-shrifted because of lack of time. There's so much available spiritually if that's something that a person is told to. And it's something that I don't know that anybody's ever regretted doing, instead of investing in their own spiritual life in some way.
Spiritual doesn't always mean necessarily like religious spiritual. You can also tap into your.
Not necessarily. As a frum Jew, I would like to think my frum life and my spiritual life overlap, but they don't have to.
Right.
They don't have to, certainly. A person can have a very spiritual part of them, which is not connected to halacha. It's not connected to doing any given mitzvah. It's not. There can be a spiritual part of them that feels a connection to God, to a larger world, to doing chesed, to different pieces that just the idea of being connected to something larger than us and outside of us.
Right.
It's like the way I look at it, sort of like you're connecting inward to yourself to connect outward. Outward can be upward, when I think about God, but it can be outward towards other people and chesed, but connecting to a piece of us that might have gotten either lain dormant or just we didn't have the time to put in the energy for. And there's like I said, there's so much available at this point. If somebody has the inclination or the desire to explore those parts of themselves.
What's if when we're exploring or thinking about ourselves, we actually get to some points that we regret, and so, or we wish we didn't do, or we wish that we did do, and it takes us down this rabbit hole of negative thoughts.
So I think the Jewish women, particularly from Jewish women, are really great at criticizing ourselves. We're like experts. I'm going to say something which is going to sound very frum, but I mean it psychologically. Regret has a place in the tshuva process. Other than that, it's really useless. It's really, it's a tremendous drain on our energy. It's sort of like worrying. We all do it, but we know it's sort of like useless. If you look back at your, last 20 years, 25 years, and your things that you regret, so if there's something you need to do about it, do it. If there's nothing you can do about it, let it go. And realize that you can spend your life looking backwards, or you can spend your life saying, okay, there are things I wish I could have done differently. I'm here now. Where do I go from here? Now, I'm saying this because it's easier said than done. It's a discipline. It's a discipline of the mind to say, I'm not going back. Going back is a way of wallowing. It's a way of, self-recriminations. It's a way of sort of stopping me from going on, which is what the regret can be. There needs to be a really, really conscious, an intentional forward path of, I'm here now, and I've got X amount of time left. What do I want to do with it? Do I want to spend my time thinking about what I didn't do, or do I want to, I remember years ago when I was talking to a group that I spoke to years ago, special needs parents, I think it happened to be, and I had this great quote of, I'll be happy when. So it says, I will be happy when I graduate college. I will be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I have children. I'll be happy when my children sleep through the night. I'll be happy when I'm not driving carpool anymore. I'll be happy when my kids go off to college. I'll be happy when my kids are out of the house. I'll be happy when I retire. And it is always something else. Or you can decide that life is the journey, and the happiness and the enjoyment comes along with the journey. I don't know that any of us are going to have things that we don't regret. The question is, do you want your activity going to be sort of regretting, or do you want to do something forward speaking? If people get really stuck, and there are people who get very, very stuck, get some help getting unstuck, because it's not a very productive activity.
Just go round and round and round, and it can be 1 year, 2 years, 6 years.
We're really good at it. That's right. We're really good at it.
And then it may be really very late or too late.
I don't know if it's ever too late. I mean, I don't know, as long as we're alive.
And then what the thing was that they wanted to do, obviously.
100%. My goal for us as women is to do something, to feel that we're doing something meaningful and fulfilled, and to have some enjoyment along the way, because life is tough. Life is hard. It's just by nature. It comes with hardships. And so there are people who may want to start companies midlife. There are people who want to go back to school and begin a career, switch careers. There are people who want to travel. There are people who want to enjoy grandchildren and knit or crochet or I don't know, whatever. We all have different, I was talking to a group of women when I was teaching about how do you find your calling in life? How do you find your mission? How do you find what you're supposed to be working on? The two questions that were introduced to me years and years and years ago by Reverend Sapphira Harris through Rabbi Aryeh Niven, who gives a course in Israel, is if you had all the time in the world and all the money and resources in the world, what would you want to do? And it's fascinating. To me, it's obvious what I may want to do. People come up with all sorts of different answers, and people don't know. People really don't know. But then give it some thought. If you could do anything, what would you be drawn to? Like, I would not be drawn to flower arranging, because I love flowers. I think they're beautiful, but it doesn't call me.
But for someone who sort of calls them, they can try it and then see, maybe not. But I think it's interesting just to try. I think at our age, our stage, we can try lots of things. There are things that come through our head. Try it. Yes, no. Maybe we'll like it more. Maybe we'll like it less, and we take it off the list. If I wish I would have tried.
Yeah, people talk about bucket lists. It's not necessarily from concept, but and the bucket list sometimes are like these bizarre. And if you read or whatever, there's bizarre list of things that most of us are never going to do. But why can't a bucket list be? I'm going to. I just began looking up how to bake artisanal bread or artisan bread. I'm not a huge baker. I do bake challah. I'm going to bake something different. It wasn't on my bucket list until this past Shabbos when I discovered what it was and speaking to a friend about it. My bucket list can be, I'm going to, I always had an interest in a certain period of history. I'm going to read books about it. I'm going to volunteer to mentor a child. I'm going to volunteer at a soup kitchen. I mean, there's so many volunteer opportunities. There's so many things that we can try.
And I think the thing is try. We don't have to commit to anything major. Even if you want to go to school, and we could try one semester and then say, not so much. I know I've been thinking about for the past 30 years, I wish I can go to school, but no.
Yeah, I can't concentrate anymore. I don't want to be in school anymore. Maybe this wasn't a great idea. I'm going to find something else to do.
Okay, so maybe that's more of a commitment, but trying a hobby is even easier. You can say that you want to make artisanal bread and then say never again. Or you may say, I want to try rosemary next time. And then, I don't know what I'm saying. It's not even on my maybe not bucket list, but
right. So I may bake this bread and my family may say never again. Who knows? And they may say, this was good. And we'll see how much effort it takes in, because I am still working full time. But I think no matter what stage of life, but certainly when things are shifting in terms of life circumstances, and we're going through internal changes, I think that we have a fear of trying something new, and I think we need to get over that fear. We like sameness, and it could be something really small. Paint something. They have these painting places you can go now all over the world. You can go in and somebody will teach you how to paint, and you come out with a painting that looks like something. Go biking if you're up to it. I mean, do something, something different.
I think it's just the do something different. Just do it. It's just that it opens our brain so that we find the thing that's more us, but just get ourselves used to being a learner. I think that's part of it, is people don't like to not know. And so just doing something you don't know, just to do something you don't know.
I'm going to give it a little bit of plug here, a little bit about the brain, just for a minute.
Go ahead. Go listen.
One of my favorite concepts is the concept of neuroplasticity. It's more well known now. The original thoughts about the brain was, we develop as children, and our brain at some point becomes sort of like this, hard thing that doesn't change, is sort of stone-like. And then as we get older, our cells die. Nothing could be further than the truth. But what does happen is, the saying that neurons that fire together wire together. So, simple example: you brush your teeth, okay? You go to the same movements. You go into the bathroom. You take your toothbrush. You put toothpaste on it. You put your mouth. Mm-hmm. After a while, your pathway for brushing teeth is very well developed. Most of us don't have to think when we brush our teeth. It doesn't involve any thought. It's a very well developed pathway. But let's just say I wanted to start brushing my teeth with my opposite hand. It would take a while for me to do it, but I'm creating a different pathway in my brain. If I'm going to break this bread over the next couple of days, so I'm not going to be creating a huge pathway in my brain, but I'm creating new neural connections, because our brains can change. Midlife, if you've got space to do something different, try something, make some new neural connections. You're not going to be so good at it at first. No, because you're first beginning to create connections. It takes a while for those connections to become real and large enough until something doesn't feel really strange about it. But if you're never going to do it, you're not going to develop those connections. And the other part of the brain is just use it or lose it. If you take somebody who, let's say, is a musician for years, and all of a sudden they stop playing, the part of their brain that became very, very well connected neurobiologically will begin to fade and prune away if they don't play music. So if there's parts of you that you like, keep up with it. You don't like something, you want to erase something, stop doing it. Make new connections. Make new emotional connections. Make new hobby connections. Make new connections in your brain by doing anything differently.
I think it's also important just to know that you're not going to do well at the beginning. And I think that, at least for myself, that I care a lot less about not doing things so well. And I care a lot less about what other people would think. And I think that does come with age and stage and maybe years of experience. So using that, just could try something.
I'd like to believe that what you're saying is true for most of us, that we have more freedom, at this point in our life. I'm not going to say there isn't peer pressure and social pressure. There is. I see it. It doesn't go away, but we still have more freedom. Don't be afraid to fail.
That sounds. And maybe it's something small, like your bread at home that nobody else has to know. Your bread will be fine.
I'm not so worried about it. Truthfully, it's good. It won't taste good. Like,
that's the idea. It's at home.
Right.
It's at home. I'm making big announcements.
Well, I just did on Zoom, but okay. But yes, that's correct. I'm not putting it a sign. I'm putting it in business.
We're not tasting your bread. We won't even know what it came out like.
You won't know. That's correct. And that's fine. It'll come out good or it won't come out good. I'll do it again or I won't do it again. I'll enjoy it or I won't enjoy it. That's all.
Okay, so I want to talk to another question about empty nest. And then it's just the two of you at home. And now, if you didn't spend a lot of time together, and if you don't have, let's talk to that whole empty nest, being a couple or sort of a newlywed couple again.
So I think that it's interesting to me to observe different marriages and see that some people really thrive during that time period. There's not so much distraction. A couple can have dinner together without being interrupted numerous times. They can go out if they'd like. And for some people, it's just a very nice reconnection. And then there are others for whom it's like, what are we going to do? Like, I haven't had long periods of time with my husband alone since we dated, or since, Shana Rishona, our first year of marriage. And it might be a getting to know each other process again. It really is. When people retire, which most people in our stage are not retiring, and you've got two people at home, it can be hard. It really can. It's quite an adjustment. But we're not talking about retirement. We're just talking about the fact that, let's say your life isn't as busy, and there's time to develop new connections. And I'd like to believe that for most people, the marriage can really go stronger from that. I'm not fancy land, that for some people, they're going to find it's really, really hard. And it's not what they hoped it would be. And it's not what they dreamed of.
And then they also think that, you're 50, you can go another 30, 40 years of life. And so people can have all kinds of thoughts about that.
Right. And I'm a therapist. I'm a big fan of therapy, if need be. So there are things a couple can do to sort of try to rekindle a relationship. If one person, if we're talking about the wives, are really unclear what should be happening or what would be the right thing to be happening or what's the good thing to be happening, get input. Get input from somebody who's objective, and don't make rash decisions when you're first starting out. When you first discover that there's more time and space, don't turn everything over in your life. It's probably not a good idea. There are places to reach out to get help. I think there are couples that will go together for couples therapy. They'll do things together, and sometimes it's once half of the couple going to help to see, okay, I'm here. This is not how I expected things to do. What do I do now?
And as I said before, going to couples therapy, what would a couple do? So a couple that never had time, and all of a sudden has every dinner time, or just about every dinner time. So, or she goes to a share, but then there's still 5 other days of the week. So what could a couple be doing together?
So this is going to sound strange, but they should date.
Meaning?
I don't know that couples are meant to spend 24 hours a day together 7 days a week. I don't know if that's how Hashem intended marriage to be, even after retirement. Maybe in the much older years. But certainly people, so create one night of going out with your spouse and doing something. It can be going out to eat. It can be going to a class and going for a walk. Don't avoid each other in the house, but I don't know that to go from having numerous children, you've married off your last one, let's say, now and yet there are grandchildren in another house, hopefully, and the couples may come, but there's a lot of time together. Don't force it. Don't force it. Don't avoid each other, but don't expect oh, great, we're going to be together now all the time. And most people get this wide-eyed fear of we're going to be together all the time. How am I going to do that? And the answer is don't. Most people in this age group are not retiring. They're going to continue working. Husbands are going to continue working, God willing. Wives are either going to be working, or if they're not working, we'll have to find what to do to fill their time if they're not taking care of children, honestly. That feels good for them. And for everybody, it's different. But there's more time and energy to put into the marriage, and don't avoid that. Go out for dinner. Go on dates like a young couple might do. Discover new enjoyments together or new interests. See what happens. It can be for many people a really, really nice time of life. And I know that for other people it's not. It's really, really hard to discover that the person you married and the people that you are now are really, they seem very different and very far apart. And the question is, can that be shifted? Do both parts of the couple want it to be shifted together? It's scary stuff.
It's scary stuff. And to talk to a therapist. Try to have a conversation together first, but afterwards talk to a therapist. Where are we going? We still have 30, 40 years.
Totally, right.
And so it's a long time. And what's if you, in these conversations, because for some couples, they were so busy with their kids that they didn't even necessarily know that they were moving further and further apart.
Yes.
And then they came to be 2 very different people. And now what?
I'm a big fan of not making rash decisions, certainly. There are couples that I know that choose to stay together in a very respectful, friendly manner, but they live their own lives. They have different interests, and they get together sometimes, enjoy together, but they have separate interests, and that's okay. There are couples that find that the distance is too big, and they don't know who this person is anymore. and trying to get to the person isn't working or for some reason isn't good. And we see in our community more and more divorces happening after 15, 20, 25, 30 years of marriage. I'm not judging it. I think sometimes it needs to be, and maybe sometimes it didn't have to be, but there's a reason for it, certainly. I would like to believe that most people at that age are going to have the ability to say, what can we do to explore all options before we go that route? And that can involve couples work, it can involve personal work, it can involve an evaluation of what really makes sense here. Does it make sense to stay together if there isn't the sort of marriage I would have wanted? Does it make sense to get out and try to find something else, which is not something I encourage people to jump to. It has to happen sometimes, but I'm really not against divorce when it needs to happen. I just, when there's been so many changes, just take it slow, please. Take it slow.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, and get input when you need to.
It's a huge decision, and now at this point, there's a lot of kids, and I mean, there's kids and there's other things also. So there's lots to think about. It's not just I don't want to be here anymore. Okay, so we were talking about making change, like finding yourself, making a change or whatever. And someone actually asked me, what if I discovered that I make the big changes and my spouse doesn't and my friends don't, and I become so different from who I was and they don't like it.
So I'm curious as to what sort of changes a person is talking about. Changing your profession, changing your hobby, even changing your spiritual connection shouldn't change the essence of who you are as a person. It can, I guess, over time. My first thought is try to include the people around you. I mean, let's just say, I'm going to use an example because it's not going to happen. I've decided at this point in my life, I'm going to become a vegetarian. I'm not going to speak, but I'm going to become a vegetarian. Okay. And I want to, I don't think it was something which would not apply to me. And I'm going to pick something really silly. I want to go save the whale campaign, okay? And my friends and family think I've lost my mind. Good reason, probably. Okay. First of all, changes should be relatively slow and gradual. And try to include the people in your life. Fill them in and include them as much as you can. I don't believe that spouses have to have the same interests or that friends have to have the same interests. Now, if you have a friend that you've been going to the gym with for years, or a friend that you've been on the phone with every day, twice a day for years, and now let's say you're going back to school, you're taking on a different set of, you're starting yoga, seriously, and your friend isn't. So that it can change things. Change isn't always bad. Most people that I know of, if we're talking about emotionally stable people, that's what I'm assuming here, they're not interested in making huge changes that's going to completely knock people out of their life. You want to take your friends with you.
Well, ideally, but let's say someone decides they want to build a business, then they were home always. So that changes a lot of hours. A lot of responsibilities, and some people may not like that. Even their adult kids or their teenage kids, and there's a lot of pushback.
Right, and which is, there are some very successful businesses started by women who are not 25, and thank God they've been started. Organizations, businesses, whatever it is. Ideally, there has to be a balance. I don't know that people should give up on pursuing something that they feel really drawn to, they have the ability to do, and they think will make a difference in their lives and very often the lives of other people in some way. Let's talk about children, adult children or young adult children. They're going to be unhappy about it because none of us like change. So if my mother changes, she's talking differently, looking differently, she's not home, she's not available when I'm home, the hours that I choose to come home if I'm the child, I might be resentful. Now, if the parent handles it with open communication and I don't think you have to apologize for doing something that you feel is really good, and objectively is good, but may impact the people in your house. again, talk to them. Set up a system so that you have time with them, even though you may not be home to give them cookies and milk when they come home. I don't know about little kids, but older kids. Yes, you can make waves by making change. Change is scary, not for the person themselves, not just the person themselves, but the people around them. They get very frightened. People pick up and make aliyah. Well, that's going to affect them in huge ways, obviously. They go off to Israel, and their friends are like, what about the long-term friendships? Sometimes I know people who go, they make aliyah, their kids are here. And they go, so making changes is never easy. And if you have to, I guess, be clear that what you're doing means something to you. But if you're going to ruffle and potentially even hurt the people around you, though not purposefully, that you're clear that you're making choices that make sense, and that you're going to do what you can to repair whatever hurt there is. Change comes at the expense of people in a very, very sharp way. It frightens me, truthfully. It does frighten me.
Well, let's talk about like a grandmother who was there for her first grandchildren and now decided that she wants to go do something. So all of a sudden it's not fair, or not, like you took care of the older sister's kids,
right,
and all kinds of things like that. So, it's really, each child is different. We always said that when they were growing up, and here was,
and each child is different, and it's easy to hear both sides. I mean, well, of course, my mother should be there for me and for my children, and that's what she wants. Nachas is waiting for, and I need help. And on the other hand, there are many grandmothers now who are 45 years old, 50 years old. They have a lot of years ahead of them, God willing, and they've got talent and a desire to do something which they were never able to do. Again, I would love people to talk to each other, and we're not all so good at women chatter. Not all of us are so good at communicating, myself included. Communicating with the people that we love and love us in terms of what they can expect, what we're going to try to do. And my response to "it's not fair" is, you're right, it's not. But that doesn't mean I shouldn't do it.
So what it mean, like, as you're thinking it through, to talk to them so that it's not a surprise at the end?
Most people don't like surprises. I mean, a surprise party maybe people like, or a surprise
Or
gift,
not.
or not, okay. But even people who like surprises, like, parties or gifts, don't like to be told that their mother's going to medical school, that they had no idea she was thinking. I'm using an extreme example again, or that their mother is starting a business, or decided she wants to travel 6 months out of the year. I don't know, whatever it is. If they had no idea this was coming, because then you begin to wonder, like, what? The child, aren't I important? Like, hello? So yeah, I would love for parents to not consult their decisions, not consult their children about whether it's okay, but to consult with their children and to include them on what the thoughts are, what the plans might be, how it may impact them, and tell their children that they're part of the equation. It's not the only part of the equation at this point in their life.
Like, drip the information slowly as you're working through it. Yeah. So someone sent this question, that any advice for couples who have changed religiously where one spouse has chosen not to observe in the same level as the beginning of the marriage? And that really could happen at any point in the marriage, but let's just talk to it now when it's really...
Right. So, I know many couples where this exists, and if the spouses can be respectful, there are many rabbanim who are advising them to stay together, assuming that there's a good relationship. I know of couples who have a nice relationship, despite the fact that one couple changed religiously. But there's enough respect that we're not giving the children completely mixed messages, etc. When it happens later on, or it's been happening, and it becomes clear because the children are not, blurring the images so much anymore, that the spouses are really, very, very different. Again, you're faced with a decision. And the decision is the person that I married and respected and loved still in there, and their behavior is different, or did that person isn't there anymore? Meaning, what changed? They were just observant, or did something internally change as no longer the same person? It's a sort of thing which is very, very jarring. It can happen on smaller levels, and it can happen on very, very big levels. And in today's day and age, we see it happening on big levels, where somebody starts out very, very frum, and sometimes 20 years later isn't Shomer Shabbos anymore. As opposed to they were Hasidic and now they're not, but they still go to shul, 3 times a day, So there's a lot of, these are sort of things that I advise people not to handle on their own, because I don't think anybody should have to handle these things on their own. And if it's a rabbi they're comfortable speaking with, a rebbitzin, a therapist, somebody wiser who's experienced with this. I think as we go through changes in our lives, there's periods of grieving that we go through that we never expected to. We can grieve for dreams that never happened and may never happen, and then maybe embrace a new reality, which we may not have wanted, but could be okay. Or we may say, no, this isn't a reality that I want to or I can't live with. And then that's the next decision to make. I don't know if different religious levels automatically have to mean the end of the marriage. I really don't. So it's not differently.
But also, it depends how long it is. Like if it's just a sudden thing, it's like someone's trying on a hobby.
Right, and if it's a sudden thing, it also becomes serious.
What's going on? Yeah, that's a whole different thing.
Right.
Like what's really going on under here? But I was talking to the other point is like, see if it's really a permanent thing, or nothing's ever permanent, but more permanent than something that you're trying on.
Right. There are people who, when children are at home, have the freedom to experiment more with their own behaviors and standards, and many of them will come back, or in some way they'll come around to where a place that's comfortable, which may be really okay with a spouse. It's very, again, we're all afraid of change, and so if your spouse begins to change something and how they're behaving religiously, even if it's not drastic, it's very frightening. And sitting with change and sitting with our fears is something that it's a skill we all need to learn to do. None of us like it, but just life throws us challenges and curveballs. It's hard. It's really hard.
Right. So that talks to the idea when the change is actually brought at you, as opposed to you bringing in the change.
Right.
It's two very different changes, at least to me. If I instigated the change, or if it just happened at me or to me through Hashem or whatever, putting Hashkafa aside for a minute.
Right.
If you were the one who brought it, or
right, meaning if I decided that I wanted to, go for a second career, so other people are going to be impacted by my changes. Let's say if I want to go back to school, but if somebody quite close to me in my life, like a husband or whatever it is, in this case a husband, changes in some very, very drastic way, and I then have to deal with the ramifications, it is different, because then I can feel more victimized, or I can feel like, okay, this is a challenge and I need to figure out what I'm doing next. I'm sort of embrace the challenge. When I say embrace the challenge, I'm not saying, yay, this is great, because it's not. It's not fun. It's not, it doesn't feel great. But this is the next challenge that I have. I heard on a shiur many, many years ago from a beautiful person that's how he says he was talking to women, actually men and women, who were Baalei Tshuva, and a lot of them were not married yet. And he talked about how people in our community look at marriage as a goal. I said, marriage isn't the goal. Marriage is the next step on your journey. And, once you get married, it means Hashem has decided, God decides that you're ready for that next step on your journey. So we're in midlife. There are changes that we made, and there are changes that happen to us. Okay, God's giving you your next step on your journey. This is just, and you may not like it. You may hate it. But you can still embrace it and sort of take a step forward and say, what now? I'm not saying we don't have the right to duck under the beds and hide for a little while. I'm all in favor of hiding sometimes when we need to. Having a little bit of a pity party. Make sure we get the empathy we need. But at some point we have to go forward. Forward. I don't know what forward means in this case, but forward.
Right. I at one point really, really appreciated what's the opportunity in this, and we can be super creative and find some opportunity. And sometimes there's a person that I could meet, something as big or small as that, as opposed to a whole new opportunity. So there's always something. And hashkafically, it's like this is happening to me, for me, not at me. Like it's for me in some sort of way. And well, it's not easy to find the opportunity sometimes, and not easy to want to live that way. But there is something in it.
There's something that opportunity can be to meet a new person, or God is stretching me. Now, mind you, I didn't necessarily want to be stretched. I wasn't planning on being stretched in this way, but I'm being stretched.
And usually for something later. That's how I was learning.
Yes, I fully believe it's for something. Now, we don't always see what that later is in this lifetime. We don't.
Right.
We really don't. And that's really, really hard to feel like, okay, so I'm being stretched. I'm developing this. And what for? Or why does it have to be so painful now? We don't always know. Do I believe that any opportunity, no matter how difficult it is stretching us? Yeah. And I know that we all have the response of, thank you, God, don't stretch me, just leave me alone. I'll be out of shape, it's okay. But we're not asked. We're often not asked.
We're not asked. So as we're winding down this hour, are there any final thoughts that you have as far as how to find myself, what I can be doing, what I should be finding?
I would encourage women, all of us, to sort of face our fear of change, not to pretend it's not there. Don't ride over it with a 4x4. Acknowledge the fear of change. Whether it's going to be baking a piece of new bread, or it's gardening, or it's volunteering for an organization, or starting a business, or whatever the change is, acknowledge the anxiety and the fear that goes with it. Sort of befriend that part of you, rather than, if you keep pushing it away, it just comes back. If you can befriend it and say, okay, I know you're here, but I'm not letting you stop me. I'm going to go forward slowly. I'm going to take tentative steps, and I might fail. This may not be good for me. Or this part of my life may not look anything like I ever expected. And I don't know what in the world I'm doing here or I got here, but I'm here. I think the goal is to be courageous. The goal is to be intentional in terms of the steps that you're going to take. And the goal is to sort of develop, if you can, an inner freedom to say, oh, I'll try this, or I'll try that, or I'm going to be like this these days. I want to develop something internally. Just play with it. Life is not a game. It's not. That doesn't mean we can't play.
We should play. We should laugh and play when we can. Yeah. Some things are just so hard that we can just laugh if we can. But
laugh, find things to laugh about, and if nothing's funny, laugh at that. If we're not going to laugh, then then we'll never get anywhere. I'm a big believer in laughter.
So, how could someone reach you if they want to?
So I can give you. I still have an office number, actually. And I'll give my office number and an email. So my office number is 718-437-6995. And my email is my name. So I'm there, Aviva Biberfeld @yahoo.com.
And also just wanted to mention that if you were looking for a therapist, you can reach out to MASK, and their website is maskparents.org. There are other organizations also that are for referrals. And you can reach out to me at jewishmidlife@gmail.com if you have any questions about midlife, or you want to talk about anything else about midlife or in just life in general. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a really great conversation. I'm having fun with it, and I'm opening up conversations.
Right.
It's a topic that wasn't really discussed, and I'm glad to be part of that, making a change there.
It's a generation where it's time. There's, thank God, enough of us that are here and healthy, and going to be more and more and more, God willing. It's time. Good for you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Bye-bye.